The very first thing you want to do when you get into the game is to go into the game speed and freeze time immediately. I will go over the interface quickly. You have the different menu options, your game menu, displays menu, reports menu, build menu, and action menu. I will not go through each and every single option in detail because that would take hours and hours and hours, but we will be toying with them as I go along with this video. Over here you have Sid Meier's with Tycoon, so you remember what game you're playing, the amount of cash you have available, and the date. The game is divided into fiscal periods, which are 2-year periods. What you will see once we start getting trains running is that the way the game handles time is one fiscal period, which is 2 game years, is effectively 1 day. The game is just calculating based on what the ticket price might be, how many tickets you would probably be selling over a full month, and then you are getting paid that amount. So you're not just earning £10 per delivery, you're earning £40,000, whatever. But the way it shows it when a train arrives, if it say arrives at 1 a.m., that means it arrived in January for that first year in the fiscal period. Whereas if it was to arrive at 1 p.m., it would mean January in the second year of the fiscal period. So you, by looking at the times the cargoes are delivered, you can get an idea for whether you are in the first or second year of the fiscal period. And just a reminder, because you can lose track of it. And the fiscal periods are quite important. But the first thing you want to do, the reason you want to freeze the game is even at slow speed, the time will pass, of course, and as time passes, the other competitors will start popping up. And you want all the time you can possibly get to find a good location. The first track you lay, every other rail track will have to be connected to that first piece of track. Maybe not directly, but that is your anchor, and everything else has to be connected to that anchor in some way. You can't start building here and then build over here. No. If you start building here, you are stuck to expanding from that area. So you want to make absolutely sure that the first rail is put in a place where you can benefit the most. I will probably be doing an editing cut here until I find a decent location, because it is worth taking the time to look for 2 good starting stations, but also starting stations that opens up for potential expansion. I will return once I have found what I consider to be a decent area. I will say though, if you're playing this game, if you are completely stuck, don't feel bad about resetting the game, restarting, and let it generate another setup. Part of the challenge or part of the charm can be to start at a less desirable starting location, starting setup, whatever, and then take it from there. But if you want to succeed, don't be shy about just resetting. So we're back, and I have a confession to make. Daddy made a boo-boo. Yes, indeed. I actually recorded about an hour's worth of footage, which was going to be edited and split and all that good stuff. But I backed myself into an unwinnable corner because I was trying to be a smartass. So this is a different map, but it still manages to showcase what I want to showcase, and that is setting up the railway and looking for potential expansion areas. The first piece of rail, every other pieces of rail has to be connected, or in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, not directly, that would be a bit wonky, but the first rail is important. But because of the new randomization of England, we now have some two decent starting cities close to each other. I did not have that in the game that was being created by the previous game, which I was doing the first part of the recording from. I could just have kept my golf shot, but if anyone was paying attention to the area map, they would have noticed, because you can see on the first map that cities are these yellow orangey blobs, and anyone paying attention will probably notice that these two weren't that big. Let's see how London looks. That's not London, that's Reading. London will be over here. Croydon, large. London, just a village. Yeah. Anyway, you can hover over any square and press I and see what they do. This is a chemical plant. The right-of-way cost. You have to pay for laying your rail in a square, and that is how much you are being charged besides being charged for the rail itself. So that is basically for land rent. A city square. It will tell you the name of the city, right-of-way costs, and its demands and supplies. You can see one city square will demand half a car of mail, half a car of passenger, half of a car of livestock, and half a car of textile per square, per year, per square. So if you have four full residence squares, then they will demand 2 cars a year, and so on and so on. This is a brewery. It demands hops, which we can't easily get access to as far as I can tell. And down here in Harrogate, we have a factory which demands steel, which we can't get hold of either. What a shame, because I've seen an absolutely massive coal deposit that I would like to get my hands on. No, never mind. It's irrelevant for now. We need to get this real set up. So, on Darlington, where could we get the most coverage? Which one's that? That's a chemical plant. Might be able to do something with that. So let us build the first rail here, because I want to see the catchment area. When you build a station, you have several different options. You can build a signal tower, which we won't need because we're running no collision, a depot, station, or terminal. And you can see the different catchment areas of the different types of stations. Now, it states that the cost 50,000, 100,000, and 200,000. And that is only somewhat accurate. The first station you place will need an engine shop. An engine shop costs 100,000. So, let's say you build your first station as a depot or a station or terminal, you will need another 100,000 added to that, and that is not shown here, but it's mentioned in the manual. So basically, the first station which we want, there's no reason to build a terminal at this point. You can always upgrade stations. You cannot downgrade them, but you can always upgrade them to terminals later if that's what you want. But it actually costs 100,000 more than is shown because you need an engine shop to build trains. I'm just wondering whether it would be worth saying no thanks right here and build it here instead. With a bit of luck, the station should get hold of all the village squares that way. Mm, no, but we avoid. You know what? This is a good location as any station it is. As you can see, it will supply 5 cars per year of mail and 8 cars per year of passengers. Demand mail, passengers, livestock, hops, and textile. So, as you can probably see, it did 200,000, not 100,000. So, we need to connect it to the next area. You want to avoid curves as much as possible when you're building tracks, because of course trains cannot move at full speed through curves. So trying to avoid them as much as possible is keeping the train speed up. So we want to have a station here. That's quite good. Perfect. As you can see, the station will also supply 5 and 8. It demands mails, passengers, beers, livestock, hops, textiles, and steel. The steel is because of the steel mill, which is sorry, it's the factory which is in this town. If we can find some coal where we can turn into steel and then get the steel delivered, then cool. But if we can't, then so be it. So that was our first 2 stations placed. Now we need to build some trains in order to deliver the cargo between the stations. So let us build a new train. We have one available. Okay. It has to be selected by mouse. I could probably keyboard my way through it, but anyway, we have the amazing planet. We can do 20 miles an hour. It's got 500 horsepower and costs £10,000. So that red building here is the engine shop, by the way, which also works as a maintenance yard. Because of course, train needs maintenance in order to function, ideally. But we want to do a mail. You could just skip this and change the consist in the station, but for the purpose of our first 2 trains, which are not going to change at any point, setting them up here is perfectly fine. Mail and passenger. They have slightly different time sensitivities, but it's not, in my opinion, worth having them completely separate, even though mail cars potentially is more time sensitive than passengers. You won't have as much mail as you have passengers, so having mail and passenger cars together means that the car will generate some profit on all trips. Engine. We can get some engine info. Either the name one or this engine. We only got one, but as you can see here, with one car, 20 miles an hour at 0% grades, 13 miles an hour at 2% grades, 10 miles an hour at 3% grades. 2 cars, 50 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour, 8, and so on and so on. Specifically when it comes to mail and passenger trains, my experience with this game, it's hardly ever worth using more than 3, perhaps 4 cars, no matter how strong the locomotive is, because of the drop in speed. Mail and passenger deliveries are super time sensitive. If you can get them delivered driving 1 mile an hour faster, and it's a long stretch, that will make a difference in income. Personally, I never go for more than 2 or 3 cars, but that's an individual thing. If you feel it looks cool having a train running with 10 cars, and I don't think it can pack 10 cars. I think 8 is the highest, but yeah. This train, it only gives a speed rating for 3 cars, so it will probably struggle with anything more than that. But as I said, 2 cars are fine, but I wouldn't take it much further. So, the train type. This is a local train, which doesn't matter because we only got 2 stations. Let's say you have a long rail line and you want to earn as much from your mail and passengers by having them go through long stretches without necessarily stopping every station, you can limit the trains. A local train will go from its first scheduled stop to last scheduled stop and stop on everything that might be in between depot stations, whatever. A through train will ignore depots but stop at stations and terminals. An express train will ignore stations and only stop at terminals, and a limited will only stop at your defined scheduled stops. You only have two trains at this, two stations, so it doesn't matter. They can be local. It wouldn't. I prefer usually to set them to limited just to make sure that they are only when I get to expanding. But for the moment, local is perfectly fine. The route map shows the starting destination and where it starts from and where its destination is. This can be quite elaborate depending on the size of your wheel, but yeah. New consist, if you want to change the consist, you can select a new consist, and of course the chain will spend some time removing the old cars and adding the new ones. So it's not necessarily something you want to do with mail and passenger cars because they should not change. But next to your station, you have an option to click and produce a W, which means wait until 4. Once the train arrives at the destination, it will wait for a full load before moving on. You never want to do that with passengers and mail. They are too speed sensitive. You would rather have a train delivering 4 sacks of mail and 8 passengers than having it wait on 4, because it could take a while for it to fill up. And the profit you're losing from having the train wait can be quite significant. Something like coal, which is paid for by the amount you deliver, you definitely want to have the trains wait on 4. Because, of course, having them only deliver 12 tons, you're only going to be paid for 12 tons, but if you deliver a full 40 ton, you're going to be paid for full 40. It's just an option. It's nice to have, especially for coal supply depots, but you want to avoid it with speed-sensitive cargoes by and large. So the game speed should automatically go to slow now, if I'm not mistaken. No, moderate, I'd say. Fine. Let's go. So now we have started our first train up. Let's go in and speak to our broker. This is our stockbrokers menu. We can go in under the cash menu. We can sell bonds or repay them. We have 500,000 pound bonds out. That's how we got the 1 million pounds to start the Brewery, by selling 100,000 shares of stock and 500,000 pounds worth of bonds. This is a good way to get money here and now, but there's a price to pay, of course, through interest. You can see if you look at the interest rates, it's normal, which is 5%. If I was to sell bonds now, that would go up to 6% interest, and 9% is the highest it can ever reach. You cannot push it beyond 9% interest rate. But if you owe 4 million, 3 million, whatever in bonds, or you have 3 or 4 million in bonds, that 9% interest rate can really kick you in the pants. It's an option if you want cash in now, but it is something you should be avoiding as much as possible. What we want to do is we want to buy some treasury stock. As you can see at the moment, they are at £9 per share. But in order to buy them, we of course will have to make an offer that attracts the seller to actually sell his or her stock. So we have to give them an offer that's higher than the actual stock value. So buying 10,000 will be bought for at £10 a share instead of 9, which is the listed price, which of course will make the price of the stocks go up because there's suddenly a demand for the stocks. It's very, very important to be aware of the way that the stocks work. The stocks can have any value from £1 to £100, and then it will split. Let's say you have 100,000 shares, just for some arbitrary number, and they have a value of £97 per share. If they suddenly increase to a value of £104 per share, those stocks will be split to 200,000 stocks, each at a price of £52 per share. That was difficult to say, sorry. And then, of course, if they further split, then you will have yet another doubling of stocks or shares, even at again half the price. And earning money from cargo and services, service charges and all that, that's fine and dandy, but this is where you will be earning a lot of money. So it is, from my point of view, recommended to get as many of your own shares as possible early on the game, but you can afford it without crippling yourself, which I did in the previous recording. I crippled myself to a very, very bad point, but never mind. Let's buy another set of shares. The thing is, that's what I should mention. I know I explain a lot, but that's the whole purpose of these videos. A fiscal period is 2 years. At the end of each fiscal period, the stock value will be reevaluated. So if you've been buying an awful lot of stocks, pumping up the stock price, the game will recalculate the actual value of your shares. If you've blown them up to £37, but they're only worth 12, then you will start the next fiscal year with a huge stock deficit, because of course they drop in value. So you start the next fiscal year with a huge loss that you have to break even just to start making a profit. The more profit you make, the more worth you have, the more valuable your shares are. So you want to obviously try to make a profit. You have to balance buying your shares in that regard. But did we buy any? No, we didn't. We can do it now. As you can see, now they've gone up to 12, because again, the interest in shares, we have to give them an offer they can't refuse, kind of thing. Anyway, I talk way too much. We want another train on that stretch, because we want to milk the poor passengers as much as we can. So halfway down there, we'll build a new train. We will build another planet, because we can't build anything else, and then set it up exactly the same way as before, male passenger. There's probably some players that will keep them separate and all that, because if you have a pure male and a pure passenger train, the male train would move slightly faster. But I think, as I said before, with the male, there's more passengers than male available, and I would rather have a train makes some profit than driving around empty. So we can just leave it at that. So we should get a first train arrives in Harrogate. Citizens celebrate.